John, and I'm coming to you today from the Botanical Gardens here in Sao Paulo, and bear with me because it's really hot. It's like 34, 35 Celsius, which is something over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyway, through the years, I've talked to a lot of people who were interested in coming down here to Brazil and spending an extended amount of time, and they recognize that teaching English would be a good way to fund that stay here, but they're nervous about the idea of teaching English. And so what I hope to do in this short video is to maybe dispel some misconceptions and hopefully instill in you a little confidence that you can do this. Because if you're a native speaker or even near native and you have some persistence, you can be successful teaching down here. There's no doubt about it. So let's dive in and talk about some of the reasons that you might be nervous about teaching English down here. Okay, reason number one, a lot of people have this idea that they're going to be standing in front of a classroom and teaching a bunch of kids, okay? And, frankly, if you went to Asia, if you went to, China or Taiwan, Japan, Korea, there's a good chance that's what kind of teaching you would be doing. But here in Brazil, there's most of the teaching is adults. There are more kids now these days, but most of it's still adults. And you're going to be teaching principally one-on-one, tutoring really, sitting at a table with an adult. And it's much more relaxed, isn't it? Much easier than standing in front of a classroom. So that's the first thing to recognize, is you're not going to be like there in front of a classroom. Now, another thing that makes potential teachers nervous, I find, is the idea of teaching grammar. And, the first thing I have to say is that teaching English is not all about teaching grammar. Maybe you're thinking back to grade school, grammar school, right? And parsing sentences on the board. That's not what you're going to be doing down here. Many more of your classes are probably going to center around conversation. There will be some grammar, yes, but don't be too worried about that. Really, teaching grammar, you know the grammar innately, right? You speak English, so you know the grammar innately, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. It's really principally a matter of learning a bit of terminology. And if you have a good grammar book, like one of the books by Raymond Murphy, available from Cambridge University Press, either Essential Grammar in Use or English Grammar in Use, and you track through those and you stay a little ahead of your student, you're going to be fine, all right? So don't get hung up on grammar. Grammar's not a four-letter word. Also, you need to recognize that as a native speaker, you're always going to know more than your student, right? And you have so much that you can give to your student. And you need to bear that in mind. You have a lot that you can give to your student. Even if your student has studied a lot of English before, there's a very good chance that he or she has never studied with a native speaker before. That's really common down here. Most of the English teachers down here are Brazilians, in fact, who spent maybe a little bit of time abroad, or maybe never have. And so your student is liable to be really excited to be working with a native speaker, and you need to always bear that in mind. You can give your student so many things, not just grammar and vocabulary and so on, but you can give them like great pronunciation, you can give them, you can teach them slang, you can teach them idioms, you can teach them cultural things, and they're dying to get these things. So remember that you always know more than your student, and you have so much that your student really wants to learn from you. Another thing that I think you'll be surprised about if you come down here to teach is how much more respectful the students are than they probably are where you're from. Now, I'm from the States, and my mother, for example, was an English teacher herself for years and years and years, and she loved it up until the last few years, when then it kind of fell off, and she said the principal reason was the students just had no respect anymore, And I think that that's something we're seeing in society in general. But down here, my students are very respectful of me as a teacher. I mean, many classes finish with my students saying, "Thank you, teacher." And wow, I never get tired of hearing that. So, that's something that you need to expect here, is that the students are going to be much more respectful and much more appreciative. Now, another thing that may be deterring you from coming down here is the cost of getting a TEFL or similar certificate, TEFL or CELTA certificate. And it shouldn't, because you really don't need one down here. You just don't. I got my, and I have a TEFL certificate, right? I got my TEFL certificate it was one of the 160-hour programs. You know, I went to Costa Rica. I had to fly down there, pay for accommodation, pay the tuition and everything. Got my certificate, and then I came down here to Brazil, and I'm proudly waving my certificate, and nobody cared. You know, I started working through schools, and just nobody cared. None of the schools bothered to like write down my certificate number and contact TEFL to verify or anything. And I've never yet had a private student who even ask, you know, if I had a TEFL certificate. You just don't need one. I mean, the primary requirement down here is that you're a native speaker, you know, and it helps to kind of look like me, to kind of look like a gringo, you know. But those are the main requirements. You don't need a TEFL. So if the cost of a TEFL is kind of holding you back, just don't worry about it. I mean, if you plan to make teaching English abroad like a career, and you might be teaching in some other countries, maybe in Asia or something later, okay, you might want to go ahead and get the certificate. But if you're just planning on coming down here to Brazil for a while, don't waste your money on it. And you know, if you're thinking about getting a TEFL certificate just to get the practice of teaching, well, instead, why don't you save your money? Why don't you look for a volunteer program in your town? Because most cities, towns of any size these days, probably have an outreach program to teach immigrants English. You know, so check through the main branch of your public library. Check with big churches who have community outreach programs, and see if they offer opportunities for you to teach English. And this would be good, because it'd be like typically the one-on-one kind of tutoring, which you would be doing down here in Brazil too. So it's would be really good experience for you that would translate quite well. And you know, I'd also like to add that whenever you start something new, whenever you're looking at doing something new, it's natural to be nervous, isn't it? I mean, think back to when you tried out for the basketball team, or when you had your first real date, or that first day on your first real job. I mean, I'm sure you were nervous, and you survived, right? The nerves pass quickly. And it's going to be like that with teaching too. I mean, sure, whatever I say, however I prepare you, you're going to be a little nervous at the first couple of classes. I understand that. But what you'll quickly see is that what I've told you is true. The students are very respectful. They're very eager to learn. They're going to be happy to be working with the native. Another thing you'll see too is that very quickly, as you go through students, you're going to see the same issues again and again and again. The same pronunciation issues, the same grammar issues, and so you can quickly become an expert. You know, you can anticipate problems, and you can get good as a teacher quite quickly. So relax. It's normal to be a little bit nervous starting out, but that'll all pass quickly. You know, finally, I'd just like to say there's a lot of teaching work down here in Brazil, and so if you've thought about coming down here to Brazil to, I don't know, to study music or beach volleyball or capoeira or whatever your reason, or just hang out on the beach, you know, teaching English is a great way to fund that. And, you know, just kind of push past your nerves. If you take a look at my course, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to be successful teaching down here. And it's really not a bad lifestyle. And there is plenty of work, I want to assure you of that. I've been supporting myself for 11 years down here teaching English, all right? So anyway, I hope that after watching this video, you feel more confident that, yeah, you could, in fact, do this yourself.